Shiur is dedicated to Nishmas Rachelea Bas Rav Chaim Tzvi. We've been discussing the Yisr of Amira Akum, and we started discussing the fact that there are really two primary Isurim when it comes to the Yisr of Amira Akum. First, what we haven't yet discussed is the prohibition of instructing a guy to do something on your behalf, and then you have the second Yisr, which is the Yisr Hana from a malacha of a guy, which is done for a Jew. And we started getting into that issue, what exactly the parameters of the Isser of Meleches Goy Shanasa Avo Yisrael. We know again, you're not allowed to instruct a guy to do something for you, but even if you don't say anything to the Gentile, and he does so on his own, he does a Malacha on behalf of a Jew, so there is a prohibition in Isser Hana that Yisrael is not allowed to get from this Meleches Akum. We pointed out that Tosfos in Maseches Shabbos on the Mishnah Daf Kuf Chav Beis Med Aleph tells us that there are different levels to the Yisr Hana. The Gemara tells us, the Mishnah tells us on Daf Kuf Chav Beis Med Aleph, that a person, if a guy goes ahead and lights a candle for a Jew, or if a guy goes ahead and fills up a barrel or a bucket of water from a Rishus Harab and brings it to Rishus Hayachid on behalf of a Jew, or if a Gentile builds a ramp for a Yisrael, so the Yisrael is not allowed to get Hana'ah from that activity whatsoever. However, if it is done, these three activities, or any of these activities are done by the Gentile for himself, and then, however, there's leftover, and now the Jew wants to partake of the leftover, that is going to be permissible, because after all, when it comes to such leftovers, the Yisrael is not getting hana from the malacha of the goy done for the Jew. The goy did it for himself, and now the Jew is just partaking of the leftovers. So Tosas over here in Daf Kuf Chav Beis Med Aleph wants to know exactly how does that jive with the Mishnah that you find earlier on. The Mishnah tells us that if a Gentile is passing by, a Jew's house is on fire, and a Gentile is passing by, while the Jew is not allowed to say to the Gentile, please extinguish the fire for me, that's a prohibition on Amira Akum, but he's not allowed to say kabeh, that he can't do, but he doesn't have to say al techabeh. He does not have to say that the Gentile should not go ahead and do so. Rather, he can either remain silent, or he could say whoever extinguishes will get a reward, but he doesn't have to prevent the Gentile from extinguishing the fire. So here you find Tosas is bothered. Why exactly is it mutter to get hana'ah from the kibui, from the extinguishing the fire? After all, I'm certainly benefiting by the fact that the Gentile extinguishes the fire for me. Is that not a benefit for Yisrael? Why is that permissible? And Tosas answers, Nachri Shabbat Chabos, Einam lo chabei, ve'al techabei. You don't have to. You're not allowed to tell him to extinguish or don't extinguish. But if he does so, you can certainly get hana from it. V'hacha aser kisha also b'shvil Yisrael. So he says, the Amira denachri adai denafshe ka'avid hani mili bekibui ukiyotze bo de'ein Yisrael nena b'maasei nachri aval hacha sheguf Yisrael nena b'maisa shel nachri lo aminan adai denafshe ka'avid hol v'anachri miskaven la'anoso. So says the Tosfos that there's a fundamental difference between a case where the case of kibui, because in the case of kibui, the Yisrael is not really getting hana'ah from the extinguishing, from the kibui itself. The kibui is a negative activity. What the Yisrael is getting the benefit from is after the fire has been extinguished, so now the Yisrael is allowed to use these objects that are saved from the fire. That's permissible, but it's not getting a direct hana'ah from the kibui itself. Tosas seems to indicate that there's a fundamental difference between a direct hana'ah and an indirect hana'ah. That's a very, very important chiluk that we're going to see as we go through the Isser of hana'ah. A very, very important distinction that is made. We saw that when it comes to this particular Isser, the prohibition of getting hana'ah from the Meleches Akum, so you have two different formulations of this Isser that are mentioned, that are discussed in the Rishonim. We found a Sugi in Maseches Beitza on Daf Chav Dalid, where the Gemara tells us over there The Gemara tells us that if you have a Gentile that brings, let's say, Peros for a Jew, Nachri Shehevi Doron Li Yisrael, he brings Peros for a Jew on Yontif as a gift. So the Gemara tells us that if the Peros are such that they are only found on the trees, they're not found off the tree, so you know for sure the Nachri went ahead and plucked them on Shabbos. Or, for example, these Peros don't exist within the Tchum Shabbos. The Nachri certainly had to bring them from the outside, from the Chutz L'Tchum. So the Gemara tells us, you're not allowed to get any Hana'ah from the Meleches Akum. You can't partake of those fruit on Yom Tov. You have to wait.